Hi, I'm Josh.
And I'm Derek. We're both experienced founders and CEOs of B2B SaaS companies, and now we're your hosts.
In today's world, getting accurate information about B2B SaaS products is tough. User review sites are manipulated, and research reports are often wildly inaccurate or paid for. That's why we're here, to bring you information that no one else does.
We go straight to the software companies themselves to break down their products, show you a demo, and give you our honest opinions. Whether you're a software buyer, investor, or user, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talk SaaSy to Me. Today we've got a really exciting guest, Van, founder and CEO of Syft Analytics, a really cool reporting tool, planning tool. We're going to hear a lot from Van. I won't steal his thunder, but let's just jump right in. So Van, tell us a little bit about why Syft Analytics and why you're the guy to help solve the problem that you guys do.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Josh. Derek, looking forward to the chat today. So I started building Syft around 8 years ago. And actually, my background is in sort of accounting and finance. I think we saw a gap where small businesses struggled to get insights, specifically on their accounting data. I think they could run reports, but they struggled to get insights into that data that helped them make decisions and was easy to understand. I think in a more sophisticated or bigger business, you tend to have teams preparing this and more sophisticated users. But as the business is maybe a little bit smaller, insights into your accounting data, whether it's real time or month end, lacks.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned, 8 years. Tell us a little bit more about, and you mentioned small businesses. Tell us a little bit more about which systems you guys are kind of focused on with small businesses, like QuickBooks, for example, and so forth and so on.
I think globally, two sort of market leaders, QuickBooks Online by Intuit and Xero. Xero dominating APAC, a little bit of Europe, and then QuickBooks Online massive in North America, as well as growing in Europe as well, and specifically the UK. In terms of those two accounting softwares, I think they serve tons of small and medium-sized businesses. And native in those platforms, you've always got elements of reporting and analytics. You can run a P&L, a balance sheet, a list of your customers. I think if you want to take it to the next level, visualize some of that data, combine it with other data, you tend to struggle to maybe get some of the insights that you need out of the data, or do a little bit more advanced reporting on top of that. So we love serving customers. That's really where we started. Sage, QuickBooks Online, and Xero. Since then, we've branched out into integrations with some a little bit smaller from an accounting software perspective, things like FreshBooks, Free Agent, MYOB down in Australia. And we've also started to move a little bit more up markets, Acumatica, Sage Intacct, and NetSuite coming soon. So tons of, let's call it, accounting integrations and a few ERP integrations on the cards. And then we also see complementary data sources as really important to get in the full picture for your business. So it's great if you've got some analytics on your accounting data, but accounting tends to be historic and sort of looking back. There's other systems where your financial data is sitting that tends to be more real time. So things like your e-commerce, maybe Shopify, payment systems, Square, Stripe. And we've also started bringing in complementary data sources, things like payroll, CRM, things like that to give you the full picture of your business.
That's awesome. And I think what will be helpful is there's a number of questions I want to ask you around some of that functionality, but maybe if you could first list the functionality of the tool, for example, financial reporting, budgeting, and maybe we can start there with the actual functions of what Syft does. And I say that because, if you go to like G2 Crowd and look up CPM tools, there's 216. So there's a lot out there, but they all do different things, fit different sizes, and I think it'll be helped to kind of focus a little bit. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about the functions or the features.
Sounds good. I think typically where I like to start is something like a dashboard. And that dashboard provides you with visualizations of your accounting data, your customer and product data, as well as some of your complementary data. Expanding on that dashboard, there's a suite of other visualizations across profit and loss, customers, products, and ways to sort of slice and dice your data, including like some of your KPIs. From there, we can take some of these visualizations and we can move into more tabular style reports. So things like profit and loss and balance sheets, and those will be very much like column and row based with flexibility on columns and rows. And you can think of those features now as like historic reporting. So we're looking backwards in time, we're reporting. From there, we've also got the forward-looking stuff. So think of that as budgeting, financial planning, cash management, and forecasting. So we've got short-term cash management tools to sort of predict cash flow in the next 90 days. We've got longer-term three-way forecasting that integrates your P&L, balance sheets, and cash flow statements. And then we've also got a suite of budgeting tools to help you prepare budgets, whether it's divisional or for your entity as a whole. From all of these, let's say reporting being like visualizations and tables and forward-looking forecasts, whether it's like cash management, budgeting, or forecasting, you can take these and you can build them into a report pack, let's call it, export that to PDF, Excel, Word, or a hosted URL that we call a live view. So that's on the reporting space. And then maybe a few other features which are, let's say, more complementary in nature, Josh, would be things like a spreadsheet link where we integrate both with Excel and Google Sheets for data in and data out, whether you're pushing data to Syft or extracting data for more advanced analytics in your spreadsheets. There is maybe one other area around data review. Because we're in the accounting data space, we like to flag things like anomalies and errors. So there is a tool set for that as well. I'm trying to turn it into things that are a little bit more people can connect with rather than jargon on our side. So
Sure.
Let me know if any of that sort of is unclear or if you want to dive deeper on specifics.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and, very aligned with other CPM tools for sure. I do want to dive deeper, but I'm just trying to set the stage here for some of the listeners. So then we've talked about the functionality. Now let's talk about the data in. So let's say I'm connecting to my accounting platform. What's the level of data am I pulling in? Is it trial balance? Is it the GL? Tell us a little bit more about that.
A great question. Most of our integrations are GL, and I think that's where the richness of the data sort of comes from an insight perspective. It's if you just bringing in data at an account level or trial balance level, you lose some of that insight. What did I spend $5,000 in advertising and marketing on? Okay, Google was up, Facebook was up. So you lose a lot of the underlying detail if you're just going at a TB level. So I'd say pretty much all of our integrations are down to the GL level. Sometimes with a brand new integration, we'll start at TB, and then as it gains traction, we'll pivot down to transactional level. But that also opens up additional insights into your customer and product side of the business as well as your vendors. So if you're just bringing in TB, you're not really going to know who are you selling to and what products are moving to them as well. In terms of that integration, pretty much plug and play in the SMB space with things like Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, and some of the other ones I mentioned earlier on. So you can connect it up, you go through an OAuth process, you bring your data in. We'll refresh data by default every 24 hours, but you can also choose to refresh data more frequently, so all the way up to 15 minutes if you're a bit more of a high volume business and you need your data more real time in Syft.
Gotcha. What about non-transactional data? Do you guys bring in like customer tables, item tables, or maybe non-posting type transactions as well?
We do bring in those tables, so customers, items, and suppliers or vendors, depending on the system you're using. So you'll be able to see AR, AP, customer sales by customer sales over time. On the item side, we'll do some analytics there around like sales by item, GP margin. So we'll give you a lot of insights into that detail. And I think that really becomes key information for management to make decisions on, which customers can we sell more to, which items are moving, where do we have the biggest GP. I think sometimes just looking at a P&L and a balance sheet doesn't really give you much to make decisions with. And the real management information sits on the customer and item tables.
Gotcha. Yep, I would agree. So when it comes to using this data, one thing you mentioned earlier, and for those listening, I encourage you to check out the website. And obviously, you'll see a demo in a little bit. But you talk about analysis, and the thing that CFOs always say to me when we're talking about reporting tools is there's like three things, right? I'm calling it reporting tools, but it's broader than that. We're talking CPM, EPM, whatever the category is called these days, XFPA. But there's how do I get to the report, right? That whole process of building the metrics, building the reports. And a lot of times the building of the metrics can be very technical depending on what kind of data you're using. Then once I have the report, I need the analyst, which is a different skill set, to analyze the data. That's an expensive thing for a CFO to hire on their team. And then there's also the, what am I missing? What's keeping me up at night? Like, what am I not thinking about? Which to me is that forecasting, right? It gets a little bit more predictive of, hey, here's something to look at. So if we start with the first thing, which is just building reports and KPIs, you mentioned dashboards. Tell us a little bit more about the process to build something like, let's say I want to see my day sales outstanding, or I want to see my EBITDA.
Perfect. So I think what's unique about Syft, or not really unique, but Syft is a specialist tool for financial data and specifically accounting data in that subset of financial data. So if you compared us to a Tableau, a Power BI, or Looker, those are general analytics tools that plug into many data sources. Whereas when you're connecting your data sources to Syft, like a QuickBooks Online or a Xero, you're getting out of the box, let's say 60 visualizations and reports pre-built for you and done automatically for you. So within, let's say, 2 minutes of connecting your data, you've got your KPIs built for you, EBITDAs built for you, days outstandings built for you, visualizations are built for you. So we specialists in accounting data, and we've gone and built the KPIs that match that accounting data. So tons of accounting related ratios, but also visualizations that make sense and represent that data really, really well. So without having, again, a more advanced user is always going to want to take a step further, start to build their own KPIs, customize that further. But if you, let's say, have 100 entities, you can bring them all in, and off the bat, that work's done for you. So I'd say very quick from connecting your data to getting out actionable reports that you could share with your stakeholders, and very little setup required, if any.
That makes sense, Van. That makes sense. It seems like with these smaller accounting tools or tools built for smaller businesses like QuickBooks and Xero, that fast access to the data is really important. Who are the primary users of Syft that you see? Is that really like the founder or executives of the business? Who actually uses the tool from the start there?
Yeah, I think good question there as well, Derek. There's definitely a correlation between value of analytics and size of business. So as the business gets bigger, suddenly analytics and insights become a critical and a must-have. We serve like two primary customer bases. Firstly, accountants and bookkeepers in practice. And there's like this many-to-one relationship, because suddenly they're providing these insights, reports, and forecasts to their underlying clients. So an accountant may have 100 underlying clients, and they want to use Syft as a tool to generate these reports and insights for those clients at scale. Secondly, businesses direct. And there tends to be a mix. In a bigger business, you might have a CFO and an FM that are connecting the software and then delivering these insights to the CEO and founder. In a smaller business, there may not be that sort of management team. But again, bigger businesses need more analytics. So we find our customer profile tends to be slightly bigger businesses than like a mom and pop shop. It's a business that maybe has external stakeholders, has departments or divisions, has managers in areas where reporting becomes a necessity and budgeting becomes a necessity rather than just seeing a nice visualization of something. So, definitely gets skewed more towards like a bigger business. And then in a bigger business, you have more complex users of that information.
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty big businesses these days that run on QuickBooks. That's for sure. It's amazing how far some organizations can get using that tool. So that makes a lot of sense. In terms of, you mentioned go ahead.
On that note there, I think we also extend the life of, let's say, a QuickBooks and a Xero, because we do things that bigger businesses need, like maybe more advanced permissioning, multi-entity, consolidated and group reporting. So suddenly you don't need to maybe migrate to a mid-market ERP because you've got multiple QuickBooks instances and we're allowing you to consolidate those. We've got very advanced permissioning. We've got the ability to slice and dice your data on Syft that you may be not getting natively in QuickBooks. So it's an interesting space there, extending the life of your, let's call it SMB GL to cater for some more like typical mid-market needs.
Some of these bigger businesses, they struggle to get off QuickBooks and move to a bigger solution like Sage or NetSuite or whatnot. And it makes sense that you kind of want to extend the life of that. And even some of the consolidation functionality becomes really important to see the numbers across the whole business. In terms of when companies do move off and they get onto a bigger solution like NetSuite, for example, those come with their own complexities, right? Because they're a lot more flexible than something like QuickBooks is. And with the flexibility it becomes much more tricky to integrate to every customer because you have to account for that solution's flexibility in terms of adding additional accounting data or segments or transaction types or different things like that. How have you seen kind of working with those bigger tools? What's the longer term vision in terms of moving into those larger systems?
We're very new to the mid-market space, so we're getting some good traction with Sage Intacct, and we've actually been working with Sage for many years. NetSuite's not live yet, but we're hoping it will be out now in Q3 2024. And Acumatica, we haven't really nailed it in that space. You are right, the volume of data is a lot greater, so suddenly you're pulling in millions of transactions rather than thousands. And then the need for, I think, let's say in the Intacct space, they call it dimensions, to slice and dice data by departments becomes pretty useful. So I think different space. There's obviously modules there for things like consolidated reporting in the mid-market space. I think we still provide a very like plug and play approach on top of that. Really good permissioning, so you can you don't really want, let's say, an external stakeholder fiddling around in your Intacct account, but maybe you could permission them in Syft to play with the data, but not be able to write and amend data. So I think permissioning is a big one in that space. And then also complementary data sources, great having your Intacct data or your NetSuite data, but if you want to maybe bring in some of your payroll data, your CRM data, and complementary data from other sources that helps you, let's say, from a planning perspective, it's hard to do that natively in the tools. And I think that's where our integrations into third-party systems can help you see the full picture of the business.
That's great. And, going back to a couple of things you said, so it's really interesting. I think we all talk about the extension of the life of whatever systems I'm using, typically the accounting system, a QuickBooks, a Xero, et cetera. And I think I almost think that it shifted from an extension of life to just using best of breed tools. It happens to be a result that extends a life, but there are use cases, in my opinion, where it makes sense to stay in QuickBooks and buy some best of breed tools. So I have Syft Analytics for my reporting. I have a tool for my revenue recognition or my inventory, depending on the industry I'm in, and so forth and so on. And there's also situations where it makes sense to move to an Intacct, Acumatica, or NetSuite, like a true mid-market tool. But still, even with those tools, it makes sense. And I think it's important for the audience to know you're probably still going to need a reporting tool. Some of them are better than others at reporting. Intacct does a good job of financial reporting. but it's not going to do all the things a Syft Analytics does. And you're going to wind up spending a lot of time in Excel. And that ends up having this whole host of issues where NetSuite and Acumatica's reporting, I would say maybe, at least financially, maybe aren't quite as strong as Intax. My opinion. Don't shoot the messenger. But they're, but again, it just is what it is. And that's why tools like Syft exist. So, you mentioned all the pre-built reports and metrics, which I think is awesome and needed, and the ability to customize those, which is also needed because everybody's going to look at EBITDA differently. But if I can get you 80% of the way there, that's a quicker time to value and time savings. What about on the analysis side? You mentioned Syft's ability to analyze and come up with insights. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think what we do is try summarize the data we're seeing. So I guess let's say stage one is like a visualization, which I guess is like anyone can build a visualization of that data. We then try to translate that into natural language. So we'll give you some commentary on what we're seeing in the visualization just to explain that in a little bit more detail. On top of that, I think let's say in like the customer and product space, do seem to be maybe lagging out a bit there, but I do see Derek moving, so that's positive. In the customer and product space, you might want to see insights on who hasn't bought from me in a while, which products haven't I sold in a while. So the ability to maybe make decisions off, let's say, I don't want to call it anomalies, but like changes in the data is important to surface, because I think anyone can get their data into like Excel, see a whole lot of data in a table, but then maybe moving step one to a visualization and step two to like an anomaly or a trend or like an error that we've noticed versus the norm is where some of those insights start to come in.
That makes sense. So on that point then, in terms of the insights that you're providing, obviously having a lot more change in the ecosystem these days with machine learning and AI, how does that play into your future roadmap? How does it play into your current product in terms of analyzing that data?
We actually released something called Syft Assist AI last month, so sort of start of June. And what we do there is we use LLMs to take the data that we have and again convert it into a natural language outputs so that users can get a text-based summary of that data. I think particularly useful, again, on, let's say, a profit and loss, you've got the account level detail. You're not seeing the transactions. Of course, you can drill down into them. But if we were to send more data to an LLM, we can then serve insights on the P&L around what caused that movement in advertising and marketing. And we can summarize the movements on the P&L, which can be quite a complex table if you're looking at like variance analysis and things like that. We can summarize that in a text-based format for you. We then also do voice using AI, so we'll narrate the report for you. And you can also ask our AI a question, voice-based, on your numbers so that you get some insights into your data. So at the moment, using it to serve insights and summarize what you're seeing in a visualization, a table, or something along those lines, and bringing it back in sort of a text-based approach. You can get summaries of the information. How can I improve? So then we'll be like, okay, cool. Restaurants, because we know that you're a restaurant, restaurants will improve revenue by offering things like a loyalty program, this and this. So a few ways we're using AI to give you both insights and assistance in Syft.
That's great. That's great. And it seems like, I mean, might be an obvious answer, but if you start using Syft, does it go back and sync the historical data back in so you can basically get these insights for your business if you don't have them today?
Yes, 100%. So we'll go all the way back to the beginning of time. I mean, we've seen some businesses that are on the cloud, but they've got data back to sort of 94. So you're like, interesting how they made that move. And they've also put all their data into like a QuickBooks and a Xero, but we'll sync from the start of your business's history. So you'll have 20 plus years of data in Syft. You'll be able to do year-on-year comparatives. Important to go back to the beginning, just so we can keep rolling those P&Ls and balance sheets forward and make sure it's all correct from the beginning.
That's awesome.
That's great.
So we talked about building reports and metrics, pre-built customization, also possible. We talked about some of the analysis and how you guys can use AI, which is super exciting. And then I want to talk a little bit about budgeting and forecasting. So I think of it as two different things. The budget process, I want to understand for the audience, is it within the tool that I can do stuff like personnel planning and revenue planning, maybe down to like a unit and price level? Is that kind of stuff in the tool, or is that in Excel? And then forecasting, is that like a high level assumptions I can push and pull, or is it based on correlation or regression analysis? Kind of how does that work? But both those different processes work.
Sounds good. Let's start on budgeting where we first started, Josh. So a couple of things there. We'll bring in your existing budgets if they're sitting in your GL or ERP. So we'll bring those in from your accounting softwares. We then have a budgeting tool in Syft. That's at an account level, or let's call it a trial balance level. However, you can use complementary data to budget for that budget. And budgeting is based on priors. So you could use priors with the percentage increase. You can apply increases with over time. You can link certain accounts to one another. And I think the big one is you can link the accounts to drivers, whether that's head count or things along those lines. We don't currently do budgeting or forecasting at an item level. So although we've got some of the item data, we're not using that natively in the budgeting and forecasting features. You would have to bring it in as like a complementary data set. So you could import it in via a spreadsheet link. And we do like, I guess, things like payroll. You know, if you've got your Gusto linked into Syft, you can use your headcount data to link through to salaries, so you can start to budget and forecast off of that. Budgeting, I agree, there are different. We see budgeting as an annual process where you're setting a budget and you're measuring against it. And I see forecasting as a constantly changing process where you've got rolling information that comes in, whether it's into your P&L, and that then updates the forecast over time. So I do see forecasting as something that you do more often. Again, budgeting and forecasting quite similar. From a forecasting perspective, you can link it to complementary data. We call it connection data, and that can be used to inform your forecast. If you're doing a P&L forecast, we call it a four-way forecast. So your P&L links to your balance sheet, which links to your cash flow statements and your KPIs. Again, we started Syft to probably get off spreadsheets, but at the end of the day, spreadsheets are still the most powerful tool we have. So via spreadsheet link, you can push your budgets and forecasts into Excel or Google Sheets, and then you can do some more advanced calculations there. So if you want to do very complex planning and forecasting in Excel, we'll support that by pushing and pulling your data in and out of your spreadsheet tool. So light in the system, a bit of functionality. Great that your data is updating real time with the actuals coming from your GL. And then we can always link out to spreadsheets if you want to do something more advanced.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny. You said, trying to get away from spreadsheets, but the reality is not getting away from spreadsheets. So I've worked with at least 6 to 8 CPM, EPM tools, probably more on the mid-market side. I won't name which ones on this, but some big names out there. And I've done probably over 75 EPM, CPM implementations. And what's interesting is, regardless of the company size, what I have seen is from the budgeting and forecasting perspective, it's like a 50-50 whether the majority of the planning is happening in the tools UI or in Excel and then being loaded to the tool. So I'm not saying which one's right or wrong for people, but it is, it is what it is, and spreadsheets aren't going anywhere.
I think the UI of a spreadsheet is still familiar, and I think why not join them? If you can't beat them, I think the collaboration of the two, will have our own UI, we'll have links to your ERPs where the data's flowing, but I think there's more advanced stuff where spreadsheets are just more familiar sometimes. Cool, go for it.
All right, tough question. So again, we said earlier there's somewhere around 216, other vendors in this space, 1G2 crowd. There's a number that are Excel based, tools like Vena. There's a number that are UI based. These are going to be a little bit more mid-market, like a Planful, Adaptive Insights. There's Data Rails, which can kind of do a little bit of both. Why do you guys win over some of these other tools, whether in the SMB, small business space or medium business, mid-market space, when you're going head to head against some of these folks?
Perfect. Great question. I think definitely a busy space. If we're not competing with competitors, as you mentioned, there's always an element of reporting within our biggest partners and our integration partners, whether that's QuickBooks and Xero. And I guess if you see some of the de facto and spreadsheets at the end of the day. So why Syft on top of that? Transaction level or GL level, I think that's a big one. I think that's something that quite a few competitors, specifically in our space on top of QuickBooks Online and Xero, don't go to that level. They sit at that TB or account level. So that's a big one where a lot of the insights are sitting beyond that. In terms of other functionality, that transaction level then feeds into like customer and product analytics. Whereas if you're just doing P&L and balance sheet, you're losing a lot of the meat. Complementary data sources, Josh, I think Shopify, Square, Stripe data flowing into Syft, Gusto data flowing into Syft, HubSpot data flowing into Syft. I think you start to get not just this historic lag information from your accounting software, but also some predictive lead indicators from things like CRM and payments. So not just, as I say, we maybe are accounting data and financial data specialists, but the full picture of the business is informed with other tools that we allow you to connect to Syft as well. So I think that helps our users start with getting their accounting reports and then start to build their, let's say, entire BI around Syft as well.
Yeah, and I think that last part's really important, especially for folks who don't have a BI tool today, business intelligence tool, or necessarily a reporting tool or eCPM tool, because the reality is when you become a mid-market or enterprise company, you're going to have both. But if we can be a small or medium-sized business and try to get everything in one tool, it's going to save a lot of time and money and headache. And it's going to be there's going to be a lot of value there. So to me, that's a differentiator. A lot of EPM, CPM tools will talk about how they can bring in other data sources. And people have to test that, right? You have to make sure, because a lot of times the backbone is the chart of accounts, and it needs to be able to pull these other data sources that don't relate to my chart of accounts. But that, to me, is a huge value add for small to some medium-sized businesses who don't need both tools. And how far can I take it with something like Syft that has both those functionalities? I think that's a big value add against the competitors. Derek, you have any other questions, or should we jump into a demo?
Let's get a demo. That'd be great.
Awesome. So this is Syft. I'll maybe mention it while we really, really real-time support, almost 24/7. So we've got around-the-clock support during weekdays and light support on the weekends, and that's sort of a 2-minute response time with a human. So I think that's also something we really pride ourselves on. And if you look at a lot of our reviews, people specifically mention the support and the ability to book a call directly into your account manager's calendar at sort of any time as well. I'll head over into the dashboard. So this is what we said, starts with a bit of visualization. I know, Josh, from earlier, you said, what about building a report? Now, this is very much plug and play. All I've done here is I've connected my Xero file to Syft, and all of this is built for me. I haven't had to set this up. I can go and start to customize, start to add cards, reorder things, move things around. So it is customizable, but off the bat, you're getting these dashboards pre-built for you. And then you can share these directly with certain people. Derek, we spoke a little bit about the AI in Syft, so I'll run a bit of that now for you as well. The ability to generate insights, create a summary of this, suggest ways to improve, and then also to narrate this. So maybe let's just go with the generate insights, and we'll let that load in the interim. And anything you see in Syft, so maybe just to give you a little bit of a sense, guys, of what you're looking at. This is my entity that I've connected. It's from zero. I've got 20 other entities connected on this profile. So you've got all of those down the left-hand side. And then this functionality down the left-hand side is the tool set available for this specific entity. So I've got some of my favorites. I've got these visualizations, financials, analyze, some of the budgeting and forecasting we mentioned earlier, and then some more sort of settings. Down at the bottom, I've synced my data last 20 hours ago with Xero. What I'm going to do is just refresh that data as well and let that load. Now, I think we did have a lot of data in this dashboard that it had to sort of try analyze. So maybe that's why it is taking a bit of time. Hopefully that loads for us, and we're getting a bit of a summary now of some of this information in a text-based format. So I can copy that off, but really comparing a lot of the, let's say, what you're seeing on screen into a text-based summary, I'd say is what the AI is doing for you now, or suggesting ways to improve. If I like anything in Syft, so what I could do is I could start creating a report pack. So one report, yes, that's great, but I could start to build an entire management pack for my stakeholders, and I can just start to add that in there. I'll maybe show you one or two other things that I think are pretty cool. So lots of visualizations. Again, this is all out the bat, out the gates. I've connected my data. I don't need to set this up. I can go deeper. I can start to customize. I can start to go divisional as well. But all of this is built for you and is very much plug and play. So you don't have to do more. P&L, maybe I'll show you this. You can click on data to drill down. You can group accounts. You can customize columns. You can customize rows. And then I can always add it to a template if I'd like to start building a report pack for a stakeholder. So lots of functionality there. So that's visualize, a bit of financials, which is what we're used to, a few more advanced features, and then some features on forecasting, cash management. So maybe I'll show you this. This is just like a 30-day predictive cash management tool based on what invoices are coming in, what bills do I have to pay, and typical recurring cash. So it will look through your bank and see what do you normally pay and try predict that going forward. What I'm going to do, guys, is let me show you. Let's share this tab. This is a report that I generated earlier. It's called a live view. So it's actually a hosted URL. It's got collaborative commentary down the right-hand side. It's got a navigation down the left, branding, custom themes, things like that you can upload, summarization of the data. And the best part about it is if I hover over any of the numbers, I'm getting that transaction level detail. So it's a bit more interactive than a PDF because I've got the drill down transaction level detail, and I can also post comments in this URL for my other stakeholders to view. So you wouldn't have to bring all your users into Syft. You can also use these live views as sort of a way to present data without going to PDF and email chains where it tends to get lost. These can also roll over from period to period. So maybe on the 15th of August, I wanted to roll into July, and then my users are just getting the same link where they're logging in and getting their updated data. I'll head back over into Syft now as well. So just show you one or two last things. I don't want to bore you with too much. As I say, I think complementary data is really important. So for now, it's really just payroll data that you can bring in. HubSpot coming soon, and we really want you to be able to bring in additional data, whether that's connecting it to an external data source or perhaps using Google Sheets or Excel to push data into Syft. So we've got plugins for both, where you could have your data flow there and then push it up into Syft so that it's updating in real time. I'll head back over to Syft one last time. Is there anything that's sort of catching your attention? Josh, Derek, anything you maybe want me to dive into and look at in more detail?
Can you tell us, I think, two things. One is, I think people would like to see is the benchmarks. And then the other is maybe a little bit on forecasting outside of cash, maybe just like P&L forecasting, revenue, something like that.
Sounds good. Happy to dive into that. So benchmarks, we aggregate and anonymize data connected to Syft, and we then serve you benchmarks for your industry. So I'm comparing to 110 legal and accounting peers in the UK. So if I go a little bit further back, I think the data will be more complete. It is the 3rd of July at the moment. So, okay, there we've got a bigger data set for May where guys have actually finished their books off. And now I'm comparing to actual other accounting firms in the UK, 270 of them, and I can compare some of my key metrics as well as my customer metrics. So how many new customers did I add? How many customers how many were active, and what are the industry norms? So that's a nice way to use our bigger data set. We've got north of 100,000 entities connected to Syft across many different platforms. And if you classify your entity's industry, we'll serve you these benchmarks. On the forecasting side, so we saw a little bit of Cash Manager. Let's take a look at something we call four-way forecast, which is the connection between P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, and KPIs. And maybe I'll open this Jay's best case. But if you were to create one, you can choose the period out to 10 years. So out to 10 years, show total columns, choose the interval, we'll go monthly, and then a variety of forecasting methods for your base case. What you can do is turn rolling on, and if you're in a jurisdiction like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, you can also do advanced VAT, GST calculations to automate that on your balance sheet. So let's go and just create that. If I've turned, let's say, rolling data on, my actuals will populate the forecast. We do this summary for you as well, a few graphs, so sort of like an analyst's report for you where we sort of talking about what's going to happen. And then this is your profit and loss. Now, I see we don't have too many accounts in this that are actually showing, but if we were down here, we can start to make amendments and we can link these cells to that non-financial data. So if we've got tons of non-financial data, we can forecast that non-financial data or that complementary data, and then we can link our accounts in the P&L and balance sheets to this complementary data. And then that will flow here. So I could go and make an advanced adjustment, for example. Let's just go to that one. And I can link it to a formula, and I can link it to my connection data and start to link it through. At the end of the day, if you need more, you can always push this into Excel, work there, and then re-import it back into Syft. So if you do have anything more complex. So P&L, that will link to your balance sheet, which then links to your cash flow statements and your KPIs at the end of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Van. And maybe before we let you go, for the audience,
sure.
Any final thoughts? And also, how do people get in touch with you guys if they want to learn more for their own business?
Awesome. Visit syftanalytics.com. So that's syftanalytics.com. 14-day trial, fire it up, test it out with your own data, see if you like it. The team's pretty high touch. So we're a team of 75 out of Johannesburg, South Africa. So very high touch. You can demo with us. You can chat to us. You can see the use case. Really just building tons in the space, trying to really deliver a product that's easy to use, but also has that customization for more advanced users if they want to take it to the next step.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Van. This was tremendous. Great tool. Awesome. Congrats on your success.
Thank you.
And now we'll get into an opinion section. All right, Derek. So we saw Syft Analytics today. We spoke to Van. You want to go first? Tell me some of your thoughts.
Sure. I have a lot of experience, obviously, in the mid-market where implementing similar tools is a complex and long process in order to get the data out that you need. So you either have to take a big long road ahead to get something like this happening, or you have to take the shortcut and use Excel or just download some data and stitch it together yourself. And so to see a tool where, maybe it's connecting better to smaller accounting systems and things like that, but to see it where you can basically start a free trial, connect your accounting system and start to get insights on your business almost immediately. That's a very impressive feat to be able to achieve. And what I really liked about the tool is that it wasn't built from a business intelligence perspective. It was built more as a financial accounting platform forecasting tool, because there's a big difference between those two. If you're just trying to gain insights on your sales and things like that, and you have kind of some business intelligence tool that you've plugged in, that's one thing. But to actually be able to present P&Ls and to combine potentially multiple entities together and using some of that functionality, it's sort of like striking a really great balance between being an easy to use standardized tool and having enough flexibility and add-on that you can actually get data out that you want from it. So that was my key takeaway from it.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple of things that stood out to me. And, again, I say this from the experience of one, owning a SaaS reporting company. And then two, just having been in that space for so long. There's a couple of things that really impressed me. And I'll focus on small businesses, or maybe less complex businesses. Those don't have to be the same thing, by the way, but it's an easy button. The fact that I can plug and play this into my QuickBooks or my Xero, or now we're going to get a little bit more upstream, maybe into an Intact, et cetera. The easy button's great. I can connect it. I get these pre-built reports, dashboards, KPIs, and I'm ready to go. When I'm on QuickBooks, I could be very sophisticated, but my business may still be smaller and just need its first tool, or maybe I don't have a sophisticated business and I just need that blocking and tackling done. So my time to value of having the reports and the metrics and the insights is right there. It's done for me. So I think there's a huge value add there. Some of the competitor tools, it's a blank canvas, right? Go ahead and build your reports. Go ahead and build your KPIs. You still need the ability to do that. But the fact that maybe they'll get you 60, 80% of the way there from a financial reporting and analysis perspective is a huge time savings. I also think that they're going to start pulling in other data sources is key. I don't think it's going to replace the need for a BI tool. They're just different wavelengths of functionality, but a small business can't afford typically both tools. So they have to prioritize. And a lot of times the financial reporting tool makes more sense because it's what the bank's asking for, or the auditors, or whomever, shareholders, et cetera. So I see a lot of value in being able to pull in more of the operational data to extend the life of it before you need that BI tool. Another thing I really liked is their service. Not everyone has service like that, where you can kind of call your account manager, book a meeting. And I think sometimes these smaller businesses need a little bit more of that. So that's a really nice value add too. And then the flip side maybe is, as they enter the mid-market, it'll be interesting to see the traction they get. For companies that are just doing traditional financial reporting and maybe are a little bit more generic business or simplified business, I think it'll work well. For companies that maybe have a little more complex business, I think they'll continue to evolve their roadmap to get there. Something I've always seen is people want to know, how do I build a KPI and a report from scratch? The way you calculate, ARR is going to be different than me. And I'm not saying they're not there today, but I think that those will be the challenges that the mid-market wants. And I think they're positioned to answer them. And it'll be interesting to see how their tool evolves to do that as they expand. So I think it's an awesome small business tool today. I think it's got a ton of potential for mid-market, and they'll have to prove that out there. And they're trying to do that now, which is really cool.
Agreed. Yeah, it'll be great to see what
that was a lot. I know.
No, it was, but it's very applicable in this case. And there's so many tools out there these days, like you highlighted, that finding the right one in the ecosystem and leveraging it for your business, it can be tricky. And the fact that they have a free trial and you can just get started, and if you match up with one of their key platforms, that's an easy on button for the tool as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard. There are a lot of tools out there, and honestly, some of them in this space are shades of gray in different terms of differences. So, I always tell people, if you can find one that's really deep into your accounting software or ERP, there's probably a reason, right? They've done stuff that makes it not generic, not like a generic reporting tool, but specific to what your business has. And you even heard Van mention that, like, in Intact, they have dimensions, and NetSuite, they have segments, in QuickBooks, they have, classes and other things. So making sure that the tools under at least the sales teams and the tool knows all that stuff and has expertise in all that stuff, I think that's where those shades of gray gives a little bit of advantages to one player versus the other sometimes.
Very true. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that they did AI. I also love that. Personal opinion, I still think AI is light in the analysis side, where it's like your revenue went up 3%. It's like, okay, I knew that, but it's going to just keep getting better. So the fact that they're on the cusp of it and they've already got it built in as these new LLMs get released, which seems like all the time, I think they're well positioned to capitalize on that.
Yeah, it seems like it. And I think in the future, the LLMs will expand to include a lot more data and learn how to find differences, and doing things like flux analysis and stuff like that on financial statements is going to become much easier with those tools plugged in, and being able to then report off of that and communicate about why those changes occurred or what it is happening in your business. Very, very useful. So there's a lot of opportunity to continue to add value by plugging those types of things into tools like this one, which is quite exciting.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Talk SaaSy to Me. Like us, love us, subscribe to us, do it all. And we'll be back next time. Thanks so much.